Morning, good afternoon. See, participants are still streaming in and give a minute or so as they stream in. You're all welcome. Welcome as we all settle in to the webinar. You're all welcome. We shall be starting in about a minute. I welcome all of us to settle in and to feel free to uh, use the chat facility for any question and answer that we may have. And we shall begin in about a minute. Let's give a minute for other participants to still come in. I think we could begin. Thank you very much for the participants that have come in. We expect a good number still streaming in at about 46, 47 there about now. We would like to begin. You're all very welcome to this webinar. This webinar has been put together by the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, together with the High Commission in London, together with Hive Group. And as we go along, we shall get some introductory remarks from these various institutions, even as we go into the webinar. I would like to point just to give us an overview of how the webinar shall go along. At one, we shall begin with opening remarks by the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency. Then we shall have some remarks from our High Commission in London, the Kenya High Commission in London, and then we shall have the webinar being presented by Hive Group, and thereafter we shall have a short session of question and answer before we finish the webinar. I would like to encourage us as we go along with the webinar, feel free to use the question and answer the chat facility for any questions that we may have. We shall be taking a note of them as we go along, and then we shall raise them at the end. So I would like to welcome you all very much to this webinar. You're most welcome. For us to begin, I would like to invite representatives from the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, Mr. Austin Macheso, to begin and to make the remarks. Thank you very much. Austin, you're welcome. Kindly unmute your mic. Austin, kindly unmute your mic. Yes.
Sorry, I was muted.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Rere, and good afternoon, colleagues in Nairobi, and morning to our colleagues in London, and all those other participants who have joined in from wherever they are in the part of the globe. It's an honor really to be part of this session. I know it's taken a lot of effort and work to put all this together, and we just want to appreciate the team from the onset for this great milestone. Like Rere indicated, my name's Austin Macheso. I'm the director in charge of products, export promotion, and market development at the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency. And I'm joined by my colleagues who I believe will introduce themselves. And I'm here also to represent our CEO, which is a great privilege to be been accorded this opportunity just to come and say her remarks. Rere, I don't know, should I go ahead and say the remarks, or we'll do the round of introductions first before we can do the remarks?
So thank you, Austin. Maybe you could make your remarks and maybe do the introductions as we go along, as we make our remarks, and head straight to the webinar.
Oh, thank you so much.
Welcome, sir.
Yeah, so on behalf of our CEO and the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, I want to start by first saluting our High Commissioner, Ambassador Manao Espisu in the UK. I also extend salutations to my Madam Susan Ellingham, Sourcing Director of TAS, both ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Kenya Export Professional Branding Agency, I'm greatly honored on exploring export products. For those of us who just wish to note that we are a government agency mandated to implement export promotion and national branding initiatives and policies so as to promote the export of Kenyan goods and services worldwide. Now, from the onset, allow me to thank our partners from the UK for their immense support in hosting this webinar jointly with our team here in Nairobi. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya and UK share very strong ties, particularly in trade, investment, as well as development cooperation across many of Kenya's economic, social sectors. The UK is a significant trading partner for Kenya, representing one of Kenya's biggest export markets. Kenya exports to the UK accounted for about $470 million of the country's total exports in 2022. These exports are mainly agricultural products, notably cut flowers, tea, vegetables, among the other products. Now, the top 5 Kenyan exports to the UK account for over 80% of Kenya's total exports to the UK market. This presents an opportunity to diversify Kenya's offering into the market. Now, diversification of products in the UK market will be achieved by, among others, understanding the current market trends and dynamics, including the behaviors of the consumers, as well as understanding the different market entry strategies into the target market. It is in this regard that this engagement with the Hive Group in partnership with the Kenya High Commission in London was born. Now, to present an opportunity to Kenyan manufacturers of handcrafted and fashion products so as to learn about the changing consumer trends and to explore various market entry strategies. We hope that this engagement shall be the beginning of long-term market engagement activities for our stakeholders in this sector. And as an agency, we remain committed to continuing championing market linkages between the Kenyan business community and our UK counterparts. So once again, allow me to welcome you all to this webinar and wish you all insightful sessions for purposes of gaining knowledge and insights regarding the UK export market. As we say in Swahili, asanteni sana, which in English means thank you very much. And I wish you all a fruitful, insightful engagements. Thank you so much. I hand over the platform back to Rede.
Thank you very much, Austin. I'm informed I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Samuel Rede, and I work for the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency. Apologies for that. Now, moving forward, I would like to introduce our partners, the Kenya High Commission in the UK, and to make their short remarks before we proceed into the webinar. Karibu sana. Hello, Sylvia. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Samuel.
Good
morning.
It would be good to also see you as you make those remarks.
I would request the host to assist with that. I have put my camera on, but unable to.
Okay.
So I would request some. So it's been stopped by the host, kindly. Okay, fantastic, thank you. The Director Market and Product Development at Keproba, Susan and Faye from Hive Group, distinguished participants, good morning, good afternoon, from wherever you are joining us from. My name is Sylvia Musyoka, the Trade Attaché at the Kenya High Commission here in London. Our High Commissioner has not been able to join us at the moment, but I hope that he will be able to join us in between as we progress with the webinar. But because of interest of time, I will make some few remarks so that to enable us to be able to proceed forward. The mission is pleased to be part of this organizing team for this webinar, as we believe that's an opportunity to all the participants, that's the sector players and stakeholders, to enlighten you of the opportunities present in the UK for handcrafted and fashion products. As Austin has mentioned, our market, our export product base is mainly, it's very small and traditional products. So we believe that it's time to expand our export product base to include other products like fashion, like apparel to the UK. We, as a mission, we appreciate that these sectors in Kenya are mainly comprised of MSMEs, and hence the need to organize such forums that offer market access information. As you may be aware, SME sector in Kenya contributes largely to the GDP. So the need for us to empower it, for us to offer market information, market linkages, so that at the end of the day, we're able to increase job opportunities and create growth in incomes. So far, the government is keen on supporting SMEs through in the bottom-up transformation, economic transformation agenda. It's one of the key priority sectors by the government. So we are keen as a mission to be able to be part of this initiative that helps and supports SMEs to be able to market them out here in such international markets. We are keen, we believe that there is potential for our Kenyan products, specifically in this sector here in the UK, which Suzanne and Faye will enlighten us about this day, in this day, to be able to proceed forward. As a mission, we are happy to get feedback after this webinar that will enable us formulate the way forward after this, so that we're able to see how do we, after this webinar, how do we make sure that whatever comes out of this webinar, we are able to actualize it to be able to see that our products are in the UK. So with those few remarks, thank you, and back to you, Samuel.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Thank you so much. I think it's very important to point out that the support that you have given in putting this together is very well appreciated. So now we'd like to welcome Hive Group, the main partners for this webinar, to begin and to make some introduction, tell us about themselves, and even as we go into the main presentation of the day, then they can do that. So I would like to welcome Faye and Suzanne to proceed in this next session. Then we can go into the question and answer later. Welcome. Thank you very much. Again, let me remind us, let us be free to use the chat facility for any questions and answers. Let us take note of them, and we shall be able to answer as many as we can at the end. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Samuel. And first and foremost, I'd like to say thank you to our hosts, both Keproba and also the Kenyan High Commission, for inviting myself and Faye to talk to you about UK retail. By way of introduction, my name is Suzanne Ellingham. I'm the Portfolio Director for Source Events, which really connect buyers and retailers and wholesalers in the UK to manufacturers so that they can create their own products and bring uniqueness to their ranges. And I'm joined by my colleague Faye, who is our account director for Africa. I'm going to share my screen with you now, so hopefully you'll be able to see the content I'm presenting. Just give me a second. It worked a second ago. Please bear with me. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to walk you through today is a little bit of insight around generally UK performance. So what is the size of UK retail? How does it break down? I'm also going to take you through some of the impacts that we've seen in the last year. So what I'm going to try and do is give you a very realistic overview of the UK retail market, but also delve a little bit into consumer behaviour, and then also a little bit about buyer behaviour as well. So if you're looking to start to move into the UK, what should you really be thinking about when you start to talk to these buyers and these businesses, and what are the types of things they will be asking? What I'll also then do is delve a little bit into our shows, and I've got some short videos just to give you a real idea of who we are and what we do. And hopefully that will give you some confidence, or at least really build interest in terms of market opportunities within our Hive shows. So who are we? So in a nutshell, Hive run the largest retail shows in the UK for trade. So none of our shows are direct to consumer. They are all either connecting companies and manufacturers to either retailers or brands or wholesalers. So essentially what we're doing is giving people a platform to get their products stocked into shops. And to that extent, you may think, well, as an event business, why are we talking to you about the UK market? And the reality is that due to the size and the scale of the events that we run, we hold a really unique place within UK retail. So we work with the largest UK retailers, and we welcome around about 100,000 retailers into all of our shows each year. We work with wholesalers and exporters. They're our customers, and manufacturers like yourselves and makers. And added to that, we work with trade associations and government partners, much like we've been invited to talk to you here today. And also, we work heavily with trend agencies and market intelligence companies to really understand the retail landscape. Our shows only thrive if retail thrives, and it's important that we understand all of the different actors. And what this really does is when we collate all of the information from these different sources, it gives us a very interesting high-level view of what's actually happening in the UK market, what's happening with consumers, which means hopefully we can help better prepare companies like yourselves to enter the UK market and make the most out of the opportunity of being in these shows. It's no small thing to say that we have transformed businesses that have came to us over the last 2 years, and we love working with companies that bring uniqueness and responsible manufacturing principles and actually bring those beautiful products into the UK. So from our side, we learn a lot by listening and by working with all of the different partners and people that we work with on a regular basis. So to start, how big is UK retail? So essentially, UK retail in 2023 was worth about 509 billion. So £500 billion. We contribute 5% of UK GDP. There are around about 317,000 retail outlets. That number was from 22, but I can't see that's changed too much last year. We employ 5 million people in UK retail. Now, to put that into perspective, retail is the largest employer outside of the NHS and the civil service. It is by far and away the most important sector to the UK in terms of its impact from a revenue and a taxation perspective, but also due to the sheer volume of people that it employs. Now, an interesting thing to understand as well is that 26% of online sales are online. Now, interestingly, I'll delve into this in a minute. That's actually decreased year on year since COVID. So our retailers, yes, online platforms are important, but for consumers, they still love to shop in store, and that hasn't changed. Again, out that online, most sales are done through smartphones. It's not a huge surprise. But interestingly, and again, I'll delve into this in a little bit, it's no surprise that geopolitical factors and market conditions in the UK have been difficult. In fact, they've been difficult globally. The reality is that last year, UK retail still grew by 2%, and it's grown year on year. And actually, as we look forward to the next 12 months, we're actually forecasted to grow between 2 and 4%. And to put this into perspective, UK retail has grown each year, year on year. The only exception being that 2020 period, which is when retail was really shut down for 6 months out of the year due to the impact of COVID. But if you look at that, really would a decline of £3 million overall be such a huge number? Or 30 million as it actually was, not 3. But what you can see is year on year for the last 5 years, retail in the UK has not only stabilised, it's actually grown. And in the last 2 years, as we've come out of COVID, it's surpassed quite significantly that 2018 and 2019 sales number. And that is despite large scale disruption, that's despite cost of living, that's despite retail inflationary increases. And actually, I think that really will give you an idea in terms of stability. The UK retail market is actually one of the most stable markets in Europe, if not the most stable. And from all of the kind of import-export sales numbers that we see, I don't see realistically anybody else that in Europe that has actually grown significantly year on year. So again, there's a stability within the marketplace for retail. And when we look at that big number, so out of that kind of £509 billion a year, how is that made up? Well, it's no surprise that a large proportion of that is grocery. But what we can see here is that 3% of that is homewares, 14% of that is clothing, 1% footwear, furniture, flooring. But what I find interesting at this, and I track these numbers and have been for the last few years, is that actually, if we look at these numbers for 2022, although we say UK retail is fairly stable, so are the sectors that people spend within. So rolling back 12 months, realistically, fashion still makes up 14% of the marketplace. It's been a bit of an increase in footwear, but that's not so surprising, bearing in mind the decline it saw in 2020 into 21. Again, when we look at homewares, it's still 3%, furniture and flooring 4%. H&B is health and beauty, by the way. And again, it's not a surprise to see that that has stabilised. It had a spike in 22 and it's stabilised back down to the 4% that it was in 21. So again, when we look at the general numbers of where things have grown, it is actually relatively stable, not only in terms of its growth, but in terms of the percentage consumers spend in each one of these main categories. Now, realistically, you might look at that and go, well, 3% on homewares, that doesn't sound like a lot. But the reality is that it's around about in November 23, that equaled £218 million per week. So UK consumers are spending £218 million per week on homewares in November last year. And again, I've put a little bit of a comparative below on fashion. So I do apologise, I didn't label it. But again, what you can see is in December 2023, we were spending £1.2 billion a week on clothing and accessories, and within footwear, it was 126 million. So it really breaks down and hopefully puts into context when we look at percentages and we look at market sizing. I think sometimes until we say there is an appetite for the UK consumers to spend 1.2 billion a week on clothing or accessories, but the question really is that what are they spending on? And actually, how do you gain access to some of that market share? Because in a market that's driven by newness, in a market that's driven by trend and quality, there is enough market share there for everyone. And I think this is one of the things that is always quite significant to me, is that often when we look at this and we say, oh, it's 2% or 3% of total market share, it's still a significant amount spent each week in these sectors. And I will share all of these slides with you. And if you have any questions as we go, please pop them into the chat and Faye will make sure that we don't miss any at the end. So again, just moving on, what I've also done, really just to give you a bit of an idea, is I've also just put in here the top 10 kind of retailers in each one of these main sectors that we look at. And again, this is just to give you some ideas. So from our side, we build really strong relationships with all of these businesses. So for example, Next are the largest retailer in the UK, realistically, in fashion and homewares. I would say around about 70% of their ranging is now private label. So again, a lot of these customers and a lot of these retailers, you look down here, the M&S, the Next, the Asda, these are the really big guys. And one of the significant shifts that we've seen with the majority of these labels is not only their move towards private label and range creation and bringing newness into store, but also the creation of what I would call it, which I'll delve into a little bit later, the higher value private label as well, slightly more unique and eclectic. But one of the things that we've also seen as a shift in behaviour is actually their support for emerging markets and their desire to actually source further afield as well. But for us, this makes up a significant proportion of our customer base, and we'll delve into that when we go a little bit into the shows. But this is just to show you, out of those categories, these are the big players in each one of these categories. Now, one of the interesting things that we've seen over the last 12 months is the reality is that it's been challenging. You know, I think economically over the last 12 to 18 months, generally speaking, people have had less money to spend. And cost of living has increased in the UK. And the reality is one of our partners that we work with in many of these stats are for them directly is Retail Economics. And they do a lot of tracking from multiple different sources and do a huge amount of research with both consumers and retailers. Now, they did quite a large survey. I think this was in November time last year with about 3,000 buyers. 3,000 consumers even. And one of the big things that they found is that the biggest impact for cost of living is that people were shopping around. They were actually trading down to private label. And this is one of the more significant changes that we've seen over the last kind of 12 to 18 months, is there's a realization to consumers that the quality of an own brand or a private label product is identical to that of a brand. And that's been a significant shift that we've seen. And we've seen what that means is in the UK, private label used to be something that was viewed as slightly cheaper, slightly lower quality. That has changed. It's changed quite significantly, that perception in the last 12 months. And added to that, the other major change that we've seen in the last 12 months is that when people have kind of less money to spend, then there's an investment to make sure that they're buying the right quality, and that's driving more people into stores. And again, when we look at some of the statistics around consumer behaviour, and there's a lot on this slide, and we will share this afterwards, what we're finding is that shoppers are generally having a look online, seeing a few ideas for things that they want, and then they're going into store to buy so that they can touch and feel the quality. And it's one of the things that we say within our shows is that for buyers and for retailers, they don't really buy wholesale online. They want to see the quality. They want to meet the people behind the products. And why would we assume that it's any different for consumers? If they're looking to buy a great product, they want to know they're buying quality. They want to touch it. They want to feel it. And I think what that does is it opens up a real opportunity, not only for larger basket shares when people shop in store, although there's a perception that they have a limited budget, often they get sidetracked. So they'll end up buying more in that particular store. So this drive towards moving people back into store has had an incredibly positive effect on our high streets. And I think this is something that when you look at a lot of the press and a lot of the news around retail, there's always stories around retail closures of large retail chains that unfortunately are no longer with us. But what we don't cover is the rise of these fantastic independent stores that are now taking up more of our high streets, and those retailers who are doing great things and growing organically because they have great products. So from this is actually one of the more reassuring things for me when I look at how retail recovers, how consumers behave, is that actually people love shopping in store. They just do. They like to touch and feel the quality of something. And I think for the people online who are listening, who have handmade high quality products, that's a fantastic thing for you. Now, in terms of how retail behaves, and again, this is one of the things that we've seen, we work with a lot of big retailers. The majority of UK retail, and don't quote me exactly on this, but my gut feeling is that it was around about 35 to 40%. 35 to 40% of retail is generally sold in the run to Christmas. Now, that period used to be known as the golden quarter. So kind of that October, November, December time is when core Christmas sales took place. But what we're seeing is actually people are purchasing for Christmas a lot earlier. So one of the trends that we've seen is people still wish to celebrate Christmas. They still wish to gift, but that period is actually extending. So people are looking to, they're shopping for that Christmas period in August, which I haven't seen, and I was quite shocked, but 28% of customers browsing and purchasing Christmas gifts in August is a significant change. And I think as well as that, on the other side, when there are challenges within retail and when people are spending differently and when stock coming into the UK is being challenged, you know, import challenges that have been caused by, the Suez Canal being blocked, or delays in the Panama kind of trade routes, or alternatively, goods coming in from China that are being delayed. What that does is it opens up an opportunity for them to be looking at how do they diversify their supply base? How do they work with a more varied geographical impact? And that, for many people would say, does that mean nearshoring? Are we bringing more production back to the UK? The reality is, if we were talking 2 years ago, that was the hope, was that a lot more production would be coming back into Europe or the UK. But the reality is, it means that they're looking at moving, say, 10, 15% of their production into other regions, or they're looking at bringing on new suppliers in other regions and really building those relationships slowly. When we talk about de-risking their supply base, it's really a desire to work with more geographies where they can build closer relationships with people. And that's really one of the big shifts that we're still seeing. And again, what that really does, and there's lots of research around it from both The Economist and from McKinsey that was published last year, is it really opens up an opportunity, and it means that retailers and wholesalers and people who are investing in their own range creation, this is a fantastic time to be speaking to them. So from a UK perspective, again, one of the things that we get asked quite a bit is are we through the worst? So is inflation coming down? Is cost of living reducing? How are wages stabilizing? And the reality is, by almost every metric, yes, things are stabilizing in the UK. Consumers are starting to have more money to spend. Truthfully, though, it's not really stopped them in the last 12 months. And I think, again, that is a significant factor, is that even when people don't have a lot of money, they are still spending a significant amount in retail. But all of the indicators from both the Retail ONS, which is our major national statistic board, and the British Retail Consortium, but also when we look at surveys from Barclaycard, which we also track, and BDO, the reality is everything is moving in the right direction. And again, when we look at this August to August, when we were looking at this, the indications that we were in a very good place. And I think the reality is, although we're in a technical recession at the moment, retail is still growing, still significantly improving. And again, I think one of the reasons, and this is taken from last month, one of the biggest things that we look at for this, and why would I say it, why would I mention it, is that inflation and wage increases are now back in line with each other. Now, what that essentially means is people's earnings have increased and their cost of living has decreased, meaning that they have more disposable income, and that can only be a positive thing for retail and a positive thing for anyone that has quality. I think one of the stats that I haven't touched on, and maybe something that I should have moved into here, is that in terms of luxury products and products that are at that higher price point, they have also significantly increased. Whenever there's financial fluctuations, realistically, this doesn't impact the top 5 or 10% of earners, and that's really something to flag. So our luxury sector in the UK has not been impacted at all by anything, probably in the last 5 or 10 years. So looking at consumer trends, now, one of the reasons that we launched our source shows 2 years ago was to really connect retailers and wholesalers and large companies with manufacturers that shared their values. Because consumers, we've known it for a long time, consumers care about sustainable products. They care about the environmental impact about what they buy. They want to see the social impact of what they buy. And one of the reports that I follow and I check in on each year is Ernst & Young's Future Consumer Index. Now, again, all of the links to all the research I'm popping on here will be on the slides that we'll distribute. So please have a look. It's really interesting if you want to understand how to really get into the mindset of consumers. But this is essentially run, I think, as a survey with over 5,000 consumers. And what has really dominated that report this year is the impact of climate change. How is that changing consumption? How does that change what they're looking for? And the reality is, for the very first time, we're seeing a real awareness on issues around sustainability. Now, again, for people who are on this call, who have handmade products, who have a hugely ethical message, who are responsibly making their product, you are well placed to start to really take advantage of this particular trend. So again, What this shows is on a higher level, people are far more aware of the general environmental impact and of their own footprint. Now, again, what this means is that consumers want to live more sustainably, but how they do that depends on the age group that they come into. So there are our younger age groups who will spend more on a particular product. There are our slightly older age groups who are more akin to recycling and reusing. And again, what we tend to find as a trend, and this is, and I'll take a step back so to explain some of these generational changes. Gen Z on the right side is generally the under 28s. The millennials are those kind of consumers and those purchasers between 28 and 42. I think I've just fallen into that bracket now. Gen X are between 42 and 60, and the over 60s we call the baby boomers. So there are children that were born after 1945. So realistically, each one of these significant age groups behaves in different ways. They have different core values. And what we're seeing is that the millennials and the Gen Z, they care far more about what they buy now, and they scrutinize what they buy. They will pay more for products that they care about. They will research the claims that are made on products. And they are more and more voting with their ethics, with their wallet share. So again, the other thing to note is that the millennials and the Gen Z are by far the largest proportion of spend. So when we think about that 509 billion a year, I believe around 60% of that is spent from millennials downwards. These people who've got young families, these are people who are spending more on fashion, on homewares, on clothing. So to ignore the views of these particular groups, I would do that at a retailer's peril. But it does mean that for your particular group of products, it's a really great moment in time. And I think one of the things that we really talk about and we really genuinely are interested in is, are consumers really ready to pay more for a product? And what will they pay more for? Will they pay more for convenience? Will they pay more for brands they trust? And what we're seeing for the first time is that there's a 42% of all people throughout all generations are willing to pay more for high quality products that are homemade, products that are more sustainable. You know, there is, and I will say it's fairly stable. People do want to buy UK products. There's no getting away from that. But the reality is there is a move to quality. So at the moment, we have a trend happening where people who are being more careful with what they buy are venturing into store so that they can really touch and feel the quality. But also there's another element here, just generally people want to buy better products and they're willing to pay more for them. And this is, again, an increase year on year from 42% to 46% is a nice growth. And if we track that back, I think when I first started looking at this back in 21, it was around about 7%. Maybe it was 2019. I forget sometimes how long I've been looking at these stats. When we first started looking at the research around this, which was in kind of 2019 pre-COVID, the only stat around this that existed was from Mintel, and it was around about only 7% of consumers were willing to pay more for better made products. So that is quite a significant jump. And again, it really does highlight the opportunity for companies within here. And again, it's those younger consumers that are willing to pay more for those products. So again, when we look at that by age group, everybody's willing to pay more for better made products. But for those millennials and those Gen Zs, it's over 50% of people will be willing to pay more for better made products. And again, that it can only be to a benefit of retail in general, but also to manufacturers, because if consumers are willing to pay more for better made products, then the reality is that retailers and wholesalers who are looking to stock those products have got more margin to pay for those better made products. And we're seeing a shift towards fairer pricing from a lot of our larger retailers as well. So again, all of the stats are really pointing towards people care about how things are made, and they now understand and will pay more for products that meet those expectations. And again, when we look at where possibly there could be some winners this year, so I always get asked this whenever I do these types of presentations of where do I think there's opportunities. Fashion, absolutely. Fashion is one of the sectors that has been significantly growing within the UK for a little bit of time now. And the reality is it's grown year on year quite significantly. And it's grown in terms of clothing, it's grown in terms of accessories, and also people like to, I think there was a period during COVID where fashion really struggled, both small and large retailers. And what we're seeing now is the growth of both of those sectors, which is incredibly positive. And again, what's interesting is consumers are being driven by cultural events, and really fashion has benefited from this. One of the other reports that I do follow, which I would recommend to everyone that's looking for either product insight or consumer insight of what's happening, is each year John Lewis, which is one of the UK's largest retailers, publishes a report around how we shop, live and look. And it really calls out the products and the trends that have done really well. There's been a lot of movement and fashion towards the 90s. Again, there's been a retro move towards the Stanley Quencher cups, which have been in accessories, but also the floral midi dress. So we've seen huge amounts of small floral prints. Actually, what we're seeing now is a move away from this into more graphic, bold block colours, bold floral. So again, whilst I've highlighted this, it's very much these ditzy floral patterns being kind of retired. And we're seeing a real move towards more graphic trends, which is exciting. And again, what we're also seeing, and this is something that's interesting, is whereas people have had less money over the last year because of inflation increases, people have chose to improve, not move. So instead of move, generally a lot of home and housing and houseware sales are boosted when people move house. But actually people have chosen over the last 12 months to really invest. So they've been investing in sofas, in soft furnishings, in quality decorative accessories. They've been also investing in garden and decorative items around making their outdoor space another functional living space. So we've seen that towards the last 12 months as well. But probably one of the bigger trends that I've seen, and I mentioned it earlier, is that actually consumers are, well, retailers specifically, are developing what I would call design-led private label. So these are some of the brands. So again, this is a really big departure from some of our big supermarkets who are seen as like value-based products, really looking to develop design-led ranges. So around ceramics, around textiles, and really allowing people to express themselves. So for example, John Lewis's Any Day range was launched 2 years ago. I believe it was 2 years ago, but it's grown significantly. And when we look at John Lewis's annual reports, they actually flag their Any Day range as a strategic growth area. So John Lewis are looking to move more and more of their product ranges into private label. And the great thing around this particular strategy is it allows them to protect their profitability. Generally, private label doesn't go on sale as much. It also is somewhere where they can protect the margins, which means they're able to pay people fairly for the products they're producing. So again, this type of imagery is what we would usually see in brand-led or higher end kind of stores and advertising. But this is what private label now means in the UK. And it's incredibly exciting and positive for people who are looking to develop new relationships with some of these larger retailers. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a snapshot about UK retail and its stability. And what I'm going to do now is just give you a little bit of a walkthrough of Source Home and Gift and Source Fashion. We do also have Source Garden, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to really focus on these two particular shows. And I'm going to start it with, hopefully this plays, a little video around Source Home and Gift to give you an idea of what we do. Okay, so where do we fit in? So essentially, High Group for the last few years has concentrated on some of the largest retail trade shows in the UK. So Spring Fair, Autumn Fair, really look at home and gift. Moda, Scoop Pure, look at fashion. And then we have Glee and Poor Expo that look at garden and outdoor living. And the reality is that for the majority of retail, if you're a store and you're looking to bring a product, a ready-made product, you would go to a wholesaler and buy it from the wholesaler. But what we've seen over the last few years is a desire from those larger retailers to go to the source of where that product is made. So to that extent, what we looked at doing quite heavily is to understand the needs of those larger buyers, of that buying community, and really create a proposition that connected makers and manufacturers to wholesalers and retailers and corporates. Essentially, anybody who's looking to stock their own products and go to the source of production, whether that is artisan and handmade products, you'll have seen a range of products on that video, or whether that's somebody to look in to go and buy ceramics at bulk. It really is something that hasn't really been catered to for the UK market. But again, the UK market, 58% of all sales are through our private label products. So there's a huge opportunity there. So these propositions have been built to coexist with our core shows. But the reality is over the last 2 years, each one of these shows has grown quite significantly. And what's at the core of each one of these shows is that we champion sustainability, we champion responsible sourcing. One of the things that really differentiates Source from other shows elsewhere in the world is that we actually do vet the people who come to our shows. So we want to make sure that if you are from a community program, that you are from that community program. What we're trying to do is create a safe buying space for our buying community where they can come to our show and have confidence that if they meet somebody from Kenya or from Ghana or from Egypt or from Bangladesh or China, that actually these are good, reputable businesses. These are businesses that care about how their products are made and ones that do good for the community. And this is where we say we do not have a sustainable section. We do not have an ethical manufacturing section. That is just our show. And that is a significant, it's really our unique selling point. It's our competitive advantage over everything else. And what we're finding is that buyers, when they come into our show, really are becoming super engaged with our exhibitors. They get excited about the product because they know they have a better chance of getting that through their internal processes. So not only do we want to show our shows to be sources of inspiration and beautiful product, but it's got to be product that's well made. So who comes to those shows? And I'm showing you this as a way of really giving you an idea of the different stakeholders that will be involved if you decide to come to the show and if somebody looks at your product. So from our side, if you are a buyer and you're working with a wholesaler, chances are it's just a buyer who will meet a wholesaler. They'll say, yeah, we'll have that range. We'll take it to store. If you're a large scale retailer that's looking to stock a variety of products, then you will interact with all of these people at some stage. If you're working with a John Lewis or an Oliver Bonus or an Asda or a Sainsbury's, you will have the kind of the buying team who look at the products and they say, right, this is what will sell well within our store. So they will really be involved in the financials. But the reality is if they want to work with a new manufacturer, bring a new maker on board, then they will go to their head of procurement and say, right, head procurement team, they will then be involved in the negotiation and the supplier onboarding. And often there will be a sourcing director within that who will also go into market and work with you just to make sure that, again, the due diligence is done. And often a lot of these large retailers will have in-country offices in some of their sourcing locations. But there are a lot of other people who are also involved in when they work with you. So for example, there'll be a responsible or an ethical sourcing director. There'll be sustainability directors. There'll be people who look at product design. So you could very well have a product designer from Oliver Bonus come to you and see you at a show, and they may love your product and say, actually, can we have something exclusive for us? Can you make these changes? This is what we think will sell. This is our vision. And they'll work with people who do make these products to make sure that they get something that's really going to sell in their store. And then again, there's production managers and technologists. And technologists, if you haven't came across that, they're the people who will do the safety testing to make sure that the product, whether it's a clothing product, whether it's a ceramic, whether it's a children's product or a toy, they're the people who will make sure that that product is safe for market. Now, the reality is that throughout this particular market, within our shows, this is who comes to our show. So in a lot of other shows, you will only see a buying team or you'll see a sourcing head. But what we know from looking at our visitor profiles is actually all of these people, we get entire teams from some of the largest retailers in the UK who come to our show. because again, there's more than one person involved in making a decision to bring on board a new supplier or somebody that they can work with to create a unique range. And again, when we look at some of the questions those people will ask you, these are some of the concerns that these people have. There's some of the more intelligent conversations that you will have. It won't just be a conversation of how much does this cost? What's your MOQ? It will be how's your supply chain? These are the questions that people will look at and they will ask themselves before they start to work with you. And what I would say is this is actually an incredibly positive thing. It may look like a lot of daunting questions, but what it means is these people are looking to work with companies who make a positive impact. And actually, the first question that you'll ask, that they will often ask, is not how much does this cost? And we've seen this at our shows in February. We've had conversations with our customers and our exhibitors that actually buyers are interested in more than just the price of a product. So again, when you make that first interaction, if you choose to come to our shows and work with us, then it's important that you have this in mind. How do you communicate your story about who you are, as opposed to, and rather than just expecting a conversation on how much does that cost? And that's a really significant shift in terms of the buyer behavior within our shows. And again, just to give you an idea, these are some of the visitors that we had at our shows in February. So again, when we look at that top 10, and we'll send you through the information around our buyer profiles, is some of the largest names in retail. Some of the people who have significant spends, from both the high-end brands to more of our kind of supermarkets, to people like Disney. And again, it's because these people all look at their own range creation. So again, it's quite encouraging for us that when we say, if you want to work with some of the largest retailers, be it, you've got handmade toys and you want to get those into toy wholesalers, or you have beautiful handcrafted goods that you want to get into some of the larger retailers. This is really a snapshot of who we work with. And again, when we look at the market response to some of our shows, our home and gift show independently tracked over 10,000 visitors into Source Home and Gift. It was 116% up year on year. And again, in terms of looking at how we sell out and how our shows are being responded, 30 out of 50 of the UK's largest retailers sent their teams. We had 15 companies, and we desperately want to increase that. And then added to that, our exhibitor numbers are growing year on year. So in terms of home and gift, it's an incredibly positive growth trajectory about the reaction of putting good manufacturers in front of people who want to buy better. And when we look at fashion, it's a similar positive story. And the fashion show was literally, I think, about 4 weeks ago now. We had 25 countries. Within a week of the show, we'd sold 56% of our floor planning for July. And in fact, I think we're sitting at, 82% sold out already for our July show. And again, when we look at our footfall increases and our increases in exhibitor numbers, these shows are growing, and they're growing because there's a need in the marketplace. And I think the last thing that I'm going to leave you with, rather than go through how we work with you in terms of bringing you into the show, the reality is that if you choose to work with us, obviously Faye is on the call with me. We will run sessions with you to help you prepare. We'll make sure that when you turn up, you have what you need. We work with countries from a PR basis to make sure that we understand what your product is on the show floor, and then how we message that out to buyers. So we do a lot of work with people we bring on board for the first time, because we know, A, there's interest in your product. And if we help you present in the right way, then you will be a customer with us for years. So for us, our shows are growing for a few reasons. The Source shows are growing because they're the right show at the right time for our UK market. They're growing because our team genuinely care about the customers that we bring on board, and we try to prepare them as best we can, so that when you have that first interaction, if you have somebody like Next who is interested in one of your products, you're prepared for how they do business. And it means that your conversations can move forward, and you can move forward in doing business with those larger retailers or those luxury retailers in a way that you're comfortable with. And that's incredibly important to us. So I'm going to leave you with a short video on our fashion show. And then if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Suzanne, we cannot hear the audio.
Oh. Okay, I am sorry, just Faye just let me know that the sound wasn't working on the videos. So we will do our best to fix that for next time. So are there any questions?
There is a question in chat I can see. Oh,
I think
actually, I did see it earlier, but actually that question seems to have disappeared. There was one from, I think, Fiona, but I don't know if maybe she deleted it. But yeah, welcome any questions, and I can see we've got one.
See some questions coming through now.
Perfect.
So what we'll do is we will absolutely thank you so much for your time. I know that I talked to myself for quite a long time, so hopefully that was informative to you. We will share the slides and the video links with you. And then what we'll also do is we will include the contact details for you to reach out to us as well. Hopefully when we work with associations, we work with ways in which to support you. So we'll make sure our contact details are on the slides that we send round. And Faye, you can see her well, she's not on screen, but she's on the webinar. Faye is really your point of contact. So she's the person that will look after you from start to finish. Okay, great. One of the challenges we have, so thank you, question from Angela, I think. So one of the challenges we have is sourcing for fabrics. How can we as manufacturers work with buyers on that? It's an interesting question. So firstly, I think buyers will sometimes come to you and will expect you to have fabric choices. I think a lot of buyers will have, so in the larger fashion ranges, they will have people that they work with on fabric supply. I think there's a huge amount of certifications that buyers look for. So I think what we try to do is most buyers will have, so they'll look for GOTS as a certification for cotton, or they'll look for specific types of dye, or they'll look for quite innovative fabrics. I think the reality is that but every company is different. Some of them will expect you to find the fabrics. I think it's really about how you build the relationship and use your network. So it could be they have something in mind. It could be that they're open to partnerships. But what I would say, Angela, is that I think when it comes to sourcing fabrics for ranges, I think it depends company by company. Some will have things that suppliers they already work with, some don't. And it's really just about how you understand the certifications that they're looking for, because there's quite a few of them, especially if you're looking to children's wear. Children's wear is so much more highly regulated from a material perspective. So for example, within the UK, it's really difficult to work with recycled fabrics in children's wear because often the dyes that we used in those are incredibly difficult to break down. So we'd be happy to work with you or give you insight on that. We are working, hopefully, we're partnered with the Textile Exchange for Source Fashion. And again, they give a lot of insight in terms of certifications and things to look out for when you're sourcing fabrics. So question from Victor. Lovely to meet you. Working with a group of women in craft production using recycled materials. How can I get the UK market and start to attend the exhibitions? Well, first step, contact Faye. We actually have a similar group of ladies that we work with in Bangladesh. So it's a group called Women in E-Commerce. It's a group of 20 female entrepreneurs who all make craft products. We work with them as a group. So they take one stand together. They bring lots of different products, but it's something that we love to have at the show. I think anything around storytelling or anything that allows us to be able to articulate the story behind your group means that we can connect you with buyers faster. They'll come and find you. So I think for us, if you come to the show, we'll obviously walk you through how to prepare for those conversations with buyers, what they're expecting. We're seeing more and more recycled products and recycled materials. One of the big trends that we saw at Source Fashion was recycled cashmere. So again, I think for adult clothing, recycled materials is huge. for home and gifts, again, how you tell the story of that also impacts your price point. So what we are happy to do is really talk to you and help you present yourself in the best way so that your products are priced fairly and people understand what you do. So do we have any individual success stories of Kenyan handicraft and fashion products that have thrived in the UK market? I am going to answer this very honestly, which is that we haven't worked from a source perspective, we haven't worked with Kenyan companies for a long time, but we have worked with similar companies from Zimbabwe and similar companies from Egypt and similar companies from around the world where it's been a play on quality. So for example, we had a handmade ceramics company, handmade ceramics from South Africa come into the show in February. We had a great show. So again, I think the key to us is if your product is good and your product is beautiful and we get you in front of the right people, you can be that success story. Just tell us about it.
Can I just add to that, Sue? Sorry, just to add, we have had exhibitors from Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Madagascar, for example, at our fashion show. They're returning for the third time at our fourth fashion event in July. I know that some of them have secured orders. For example, one of the exhibitors from Madagascar has secured an order with John Lewis. You might remember seeing John Lewis from Caesar's top 10 retailers. So that's a huge retailer that has the power to really transform an SME business. And on the handcraft side as well, we mentioned the Egyptian pavilion. We will share our YouTube channel. You can have a little look at some of the handcrafters. We sort of call them the makers. A lot of them are supporting refugees, and one of them actually secured an order on site, which is actually quite unusual. So I think anyone operating in the same sort of subsectors would do very well. And I also wanted to add that we had a buyer from a company called Tutu Pekin, which some of you might like to Google, but they focus specifically on sourcing African prints, African fabrics to cater to the UK market, of which there's a large African diaspora. So I just wanted to add to that.
Thank you, Faye. And you have more insight than me. I think the other thing that's quite powerful is that we're also partnered with our own foreign office. And we have at each show, we'll have either a content theatre, so a responsible retail stage at home and gift, and we have our source fashion catwalk that you saw in the video. One of the pieces that we do a huge amount of education for is the Developing Countries Trading Scheme. And this comes into your question, Robert, which is how do you, as a handcrafted producer, compete with the price of large-scale manufacturing? The reality is you don't compete with them. You can't. You're a different product. And there is a reality within the UK buying community that if you want to buy volume and you want to buy in thousands of pieces, there is a different price that you pay for that. But the reason I mentioned the Developing Country Trading Scheme is because it removes import duties from products that fit into certain categories. I am fairly certain Kenyan handcrafted products fit into that Developing Countries Trading Scheme, which means that if somebody like a John Lewis, and this is a real life case study, they did not source from Madagascar. Their head of sourcing came into Source Fashion because they were curious about the Developing Countries Trading Scheme, and they learned that Madagascar was now import duty free, which meant that that location then become accessible for them to be able to protect their profit margins, but also to be able to pay more for the products that they were buying in country. So I think the reality is to answer Robert's question, what's the margin a UK retailer is willing to pay to get fair products? Well, they're willing to pay you a fair price. And there's important tax exemptions now that are in place that allow them to spend more on better products. That margin will differ from company to company. Some of them are not great to work with, some of them are. And I think that's the reality, is that within our audience, within our source shows, there is a reality check that well-made products cost more to produce. So again, negotiate that. But I think the video that we have on our YouTube and some of the testimonials from our Egyptian customers will testify to the fact that it's not a conversation about the cheapest possible price. So just looking through the questions. Robert, I know you've got a follow-up question. How can we differentiate the final prices of the UK market with our online presence? How can we avoid Okay, so I think this is all about how you work with the retailer. So I think if I can summarize your question, it's really how do you differentiate the quality of your product? If you work, and again, this is where storytelling comes into play. Retailers now know that customers will buy more for better made products, and the onus is on how they storytell your product, not in terms of how you storytell your product. So I think really what you need to do is look at how you articulate your brand value and your product to that retailer so that they can actually increase their prices in store to pay you the prices that you need. So how you differentiate that product through social media is really not important. And again, one of the things to understand is that you would be sold more than likely as a private label range, which is that you would possibly be unique to that particular store, or they'd have some range differentiation. That means in the UK, there is no competition on private label prices. If people go online and they see something similar, the UK retailer says, well, that's a different product. This is handmade. This is different. This is our unique product. So actually they're able to hold their margins, which again means fairer pricing. And I do apologize. I think Faye's just let me know that there are some more questions in the actual Q&A tab. Faye, could you maybe, oh, I've got them. Thank you very much. How do you get the recording? We will happily send that through you. How do we support sustainable yarn supplies from Kenya? I think the reality is, and how you support that is that just work with us. If you are somebody that supplies yarns and you're sitting here and listening to me, please reach out to us. I think the best that we can do to support you is to sell the story of how you produce those yarns, what's different about it, what's unique. And really our buyers are looking for unique. And I think to answer Sheila's question, who are these buyers? Again, when we send you around the presentation, it's not just a buyer from a large retailer. We've highlighted a group of about 25. The reality is we have 10,000 people coming through the door at Source Home and Gift. We have around about 3,000, 3,500 people come through the door at Source Fashion. Those are from a range of large-scale retailers, and I'll just speak on fashion for a second. Large-scale retailers, for example, like your John Lewis's, but also like your Selfridges or like your Burberry's or your Lulu Guinness. And those are higher-end brands that are looking for unique and special. And then there's also those boutiques who order in lower order quantities but higher prices. Now, actually, in terms of what I'm going to touch on, one of the sections that we're introducing into both of our shows is we have Source Luxury, which is going into our fashion show. And that's to really represent the handmade, the handcrafted, the slow fashion elements. And then we also have what we're putting into our home and gift show is our makers zone. So those again is where we highlight the handmade, the handcrafted, the high quality and the beautiful and the unique. So for anybody who's sitting in this room, you would live in those two sectors, because what you don't do is you don't produce cheap products. You don't produce mass market. So the reality is that for you, that will be a significant advantage to where you're positioned within the show. So again, it's a huge range of buyers, from both your large retailers to your luxury. And we will obviously share with you again our YouTube channels. I've got a few questions around product. So firstly, gym wear and active wear for fashion is hugely popular. It's been one of the highest growing sectors for the last few years. In fact, active wear and loungewear, as we call it, has been a significant growth sector for fashion. So some of our best performing manufacturers have met people like Gymshark at the show. And again, they're people that want, these manufacturers are ones that want to diversify, but also ones that want to be inclusive of body shape and size as well. So again, in terms of modest gym wear or active wear, there's a few things here at play. Firstly, active wear is a huge growth sector within the UK fashion community and sportswear as people become more active, but also people are also more aware of modest fashion. And it used to be that we would think about modest wear or modest fashion and think it was unfashionable or it wasn't something that could appeal for mass markets. But actually, we're seeing a lot more of our larger retailers take this into mind. So in the UK, we see a lot more long sleeve and long dresses. It's just become mainstream fashion. So I think, again, modest gym wear, it's the same as gym wear. And we definitely have people who do source for that within our different larger retailers. And again, just a few more questions in separate Q&A around application. Please just reach out to Faye. We will send you our details, her details. She can talk you through the shows. I think sisal baskets and again, anything that's obviously handmade will always do well at our shows, and it will be somewhere that buyers will go to because they're aspirational products. And I have no doubt the products that would come to us from Kenya would be beautiful. So please get in touch with Faye. We do have space at both our July show and our September show, but they run every February. Our home and gift runs in February and July, February and September, and our fashion runs in February and July. So again, there's still plenty of time for you to get involved with either side of this. And again, I think in terms of just that, I'm going to take one or two last questions because I'm quite conscious of time. In terms of clothing manufacturers or getting advice on sponsorship or funding, I think that's something we're obviously in partnership with KEPABRA, and also the Kenyan High Commission is on this webinar as well. So I would say it's likely there will be some support available to you, and that information will be shared with you if you wish to do the show. So we'll try and do our best to make the shows as accessible and as successful as we can do. So the program I mentioned, the Developing Countries Trading Scheme, and this is the last question. This is a tax exemption. So this is the UK government has said to UK businesses, if you wish to do business with these 85 countries, we'll remove import duties. And the reason that's been done is that there is a genuine will to diversify and de-risk away from Asia for manufacturing. But also there's a will on the UK government side to develop better trading links with countries like Kenya, and with 84 other countries. So this is automatically applied, and we do a lot of education to UK UK retailers and to UK wholesalers to make sure they're aware of that. Most of them haven't been, but when they are, they become interested in developing countries. And we saw that at our February show. Samuel, I have absolutely run over time, so I am going to pass back to you, but I hope to everybody that was useful insight, which hopefully has gotten you a little bit excited about working with us here in the UK.
Thank you very, very much, Suzanne. I think we love the questions, very, very good questions. I think I've seen a number of hands that have raised, and I don't know, our time is up, but and why don't you allow us just one question, just one person to just say something. I think Christine has been persistent enough, has really been on, has had her hand up. Christine Gidiomi, maybe just that one comment, and then we can head towards a close. Because Edgar, if you could give her unmute her mic, just say one thing, and then we can head towards a close. Christine, can you hear us? Christine? Unfortunately, it seems we cannot hear her, or some technical issue, but I think I must say that this was very, very informative. And I'm happy to see the kind of insight and the kind of questions that are coming through. Thank you very much, Suzanne, for that very good presentation. As has been pointed out, we shall ensure that all of us get a copy of the presentation and the links as they come, and we shall ensure to have that circulated to everyone. I think with the developing countries trading scheme, I think that is a very good information to us, and I think we shall also seek to see how we can get as much package, as much information around it, and see how we can share that to all of us. I think it's good to also point out that Kenya and the UK signed an economic partnership agreement. A lot of market access issues have been addressed in that front. Then our products really access the market duty-free, quota-free, and there is then some preference in that sense. So I think it's for us to see how we can exploit this. And as has been said in the beginning, we are seeking to deepen our engagement in the market. I think our traditional products have been there, but it's about time we get different and more products into the market. Hence this kind of webinar, to just create awareness and to create these opportunities, make sure that our producers understand this kind of opportunities. A number of questions have been mentioned about sponsorship. And I think those give us a very good, some things to go and think about as a government agency, and together with partners like Hive. to see how we can work together around a scheme or something like that to ensure that we get our products starting to enter the market. I think those will be discussions we can go into later with Suzanne and Hive, and to see how we can do that together with the Embassy of Kenya on the other end. But we are very, very grateful for the presentation. I know time has gone. We have short our time. And Suzanne, thank you very much. Sylvia from the High Commission, thank you. Pass our regards to the High Commissioner and the team there. Faith, thank you very much for helping us put this together and for being patient with us in the many meetings to put this together. For all the participants that are here, thank you very, very much. Thank you for all those that registered. Thank you for those that have logged in and have listened in. We are going to share this presentation together with contacts for all these entities that put this together. That is the High Commission, Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, and Hive Group. We shall share those comments kindly, those contacts. Please use them. Please do not hesitate to reach out with any question, and we shall ensure that they are responded to and in the right manner. Thank you very much. We are heading to a close of this session. Have a blessed day, have a blessed afternoon, have a blessed morning, Suzanne and Faye, on that end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samuel.